One of my favorite tools in my garage has to be this marking gauge. I made this a few years ago and it really is a great tool. I could probably tweak it a little bit, but I'm ready for a change. So I made this marking gauge. Not only is it easy to place marks for drilling holes, but I can make wide parallel marks from the edge, which means I'm doing less measuring with a ruler. If I set this to 6 inches, I can very easily transfer my mark to a board. This is something that I have not seen with other tools. Maybe there's a tool out there that does it, but the entire thing can cost you less than $5 to make. But let me show you how I made this. To get started, you really don't need a lot of things to make this project. I've got a 1/4-inch steel dowel here that's mild steel that has a zinc covering on it. I've got a 1/2-inch rare earth magnet here that will just give us a little bit of resistance so that it doesn't move after we've set it. The pencil lead that I'll be using is 2 millimeters, which is great because anything thinner than this really is obviously much more fragile. And you'll need a 5/64 drill bit, which is the same size as the pencil lead. For the handle, I'm using some red heart and maple. You can go with the same species if you want, but they will need to be cut in half like this. Now, with my previous one, I had a little bit bigger of an area. With this one, I don't think it matters as much. I still want to have a wide area as far as going this way, which is what this will butt up against the face of whatever we're marking. We'll drill a channel in both of these pieces and then they'll sandwich together like this. But before we cut the channel out, we want to add our magnet. It'll be a little bit more difficult to cut the channel out later on, so we'll go ahead and drill it out now. It doesn't really matter which side you choose. You're just going to pick one side and we'll drill that depth out. I'm going to choose the red heart here and I'll connect the 2 points. It really doesn't have to be exactly the center. If my rod is a 1/4 of an inch, I need to cut out 1/8 of an inch on each side. So I'm going to go down 1/8 of an inch, plus I'm going to go the depth of the actual magnet, which this is about 1/8 of an inch. So I'm going to drill down about a 1/4 of an inch altogether. At the drill press, I've got my 1/2-inch drill bit in here, and I've added a mark to the side, which is a 1/4 inch down. So I'm going to go ahead and set this for that. The truth is, I did set this for a 1/4 of an inch, thinking that I'd have that 1/8 inch on the top, and it does look like it's going to be really close, but I have created the hole to get started with this so that later on it'll be easier to add a deeper hole if I need to. But now we're going to go ahead and cut this channel out on the table saw. The most important part of this entire project right now is going to hinge on the table saw. You could try to glue these together and drill a hole through the side, but you're not going to get a square hole. And when I mean square, we want to make sure there's a 90-degree angle from the bar to the top of our stock. The best way to do that is with a table saw. But first, let's remove all the fuzzies that might be on the ends from when we cut these. We're going to center the blade as much as we can to the block. And we also want to make sure that we just go a little bit above the surface. I'm going to increase this a little bit so that I can make sure that I'm exactly centered with this. Now the trick to this is running it through one way, flipping it, and running it through the other way. This will make sure that you always have a centered channel. And as we go along, we want to make sure that we stop each time and check to see if this is centered inside of that slot. And now with both pieces cut, we'll check it with our bar, and that fits and slides really nice. And of course, if we didn't add the magnet right now, we could glue these together and it would move around. It would be terrible to use, which is why we're going to add the magnet. Now I'm going to add my magnet, and as you can see, it's not far enough down. So I'm going to go ahead and drill this down a little bit more so that the magnet is flush with this cut that we made. Now I don't know if you can see this, but I'm flush to the surface. I could add some epoxy to this, but once I put these 2 blocks together, it becomes kind of a captured thing. Now I'm going to go ahead and glue these together, and I think I'm going to go ahead and leave the bar in here. I think that should be okay. Okay, this is dry now, and it works really well. It's got a real stiff feel to it, which is good. We're going to work on the bar now. We'll take our 5/64 inch bit and we're going to drill a hole all the way through. Just like an awl, we're going to make sure that we mark our surface before we start drilling. This is a really tiny bit and it will want to wander and move, and we don't want that. Let's see how this fits. It's got a nice tight grip, and it actually shaves a little bit of the graphite off as it's being pushed in. But let's see how this measures. Let's say I want to do 1/2 inch. I'll just measure up to that point. And if we measure this, we're at 1/2 inch. I think at this point this is pretty self-explanatory how it works. You'll insert a 2mm lead here, and then you can make your mark. The most challenging part of this is obviously going to be to keep the pencil lead from pushing back as you're pushing on it. The way that you can fix this is by using a smaller piece. Obviously you don't want to have it sticking out too far. I think that having a piece that's about the size of the body is probably going to be the best. And then we'll push it in. This would be where I'd want to add my point. While this will technically work just fine, I think the better solution is to make smaller pieces like this, and then using a magnet on the back side. This is a relatively strong rare earth magnet that will not push away even if I push really hard. So this actually does a lot better job than just sticking a piece in. Of course, if you're breaking these off, you're going to have a very dull, fat point. The way that I fix this is I come down here and I grind a little bit of a point off. So you can see it didn't take very long at all to make that point. Of course, when I go to set my gauge, I'm going to set it to that point. One thing I also did in this video was that I made it so that the magnet inside is not glued on, and I think that that probably should be epoxied in. Now that I've done it this way, in case there's any kind of movement or any kind of play with the magnet inside, you don't want to have any play that would cause it to not stay in one place. But that's what I've got for you guys today. Let me know if this is something that interests you, or if this is something that you would make down in the comments down below. I really appreciate you watching. It means the world to me. And I want to thank my patrons for supporting me. It really helps out.